when we take the focus off of us, when we take the focus off of our circumstances, and we start looking to Him, that is where the despair ends and the hope begins. Today's just one of those topics where you just need to pull the chair and get real. You know, I said last week, I joked, the other church laughed, but you guys didn't. I said, you know, every year I have to fill out my outstanding paperwork. If I don't fill it out, I guess I can't be your pastor. But I said, if that means that I haven't found out, do I get to sit? There, see, I think you guys just didn't hear it last week because you laughed now. Well, I haven't gotten my paperwork yet, so I get to sit. That was the other thing. You know, the more I thought about that, I thought, well, the problem is when we talk about despair, a lot of people look at pastors and they think we got it all together, right? And we know all the right stuff. No, we just know the right person. That our lives are great and cool, and sometimes we get put up on a pedestal. Well, kind of like this. But you know what? It's real easy to get knocked off your perch. And no, I love you in you a little secret. Pastors don't have it all together. Pastors don't have all the answers. We just know the one who does. But guess what? You know it too. Well, today I said we're doing this series. Last week we looked at appreciation. All those little bitty tiny things, even on the worst of days, the worst of situations, we can still find something little that we can appreciate. Well, today we're going to go into the throes of anxiety, but it's not going to be too bad. I think it was interesting, the response that I got from the last service. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, that was the most awesome message. Not one that you would think you would hear from a topic like despair, right? Next week, we're talking about joy. That's one you'd think that everybody would be, yay! But they were all like, because we can all relate. You know, I said throughout my lifetime, there have been things throughout the world and circumstances in my life where, you know, you have the ebbs and flows. But this is the first time that I can remember. Now again, I wasn't back in Vietnam or World War II or Korea. I don't know how long that affected, but this is the first time that I've been alive where it went up and it just stayed. It's always something new, isn't it? There's always something. If you want to be in despair, all you got to do is turn on the TV or read the newspaper or good grief. If it's not COVID, it's stuff going on in the world. It's now Russia and Ukraine. It's all those things that we have absolutely no control over whatsoever. The loss of jobs. They're not even able to get your tire fixed because due to the lack of people or because of COVID, they're open, they're not open. They're open, they're not open. And if you can't get your tire fixed, you can't get to school, you can't get to work. You know, it's all those things, constant little inconveniences that we didn't have to deal with quite so much before. Wearing masks? No wearing masks. Are we going to be over this? Are we not going to be over this? Are they going to have what I need? Am I going to be able to get it shipped to me in time? Deanna has a dress shop. She's looking at months to get wedding dresses and prom dresses. And now they're having to fly them in because they can't get them there in time by ship. All those things that when they mount up can kind of throw you in to despair. Then you want to throw in loved ones with medical conditions. And not have anything to do with COVID. It's just called life, right? Broken bones, normal aches and pains, normal illnesses. But they mount up. And when things are already at an inconvenience, when you already feel like you're at your last, one more thing happens, right? We've had how many people pass away? And the worst part about that is, we weren't able to go to a lot of the funerals, especially for loved ones that have it far away. They couldn't travel, they couldn't be there, they couldn't have that closure, they couldn't see the or before to see them. And they feel totally robbed of that entire time, which is very real. Have you ever been to that point where you're like, so help me God, if just one more thing happens, I'm going to snap? Or, you know what, they've had the line forever, I have one last nerve, and you're on it. It's true. It's just life. Everyone that's laughing is married. Or has kids. Right? I said, you know, that we're dealing now in a time where suicide is at the highest that it's ever been. And while, yes, suicide is affected by outside sources, this is a time where we've had so much that's been by external that if just one thing or two things would have changed in the world, that would have never happened. Why is that? Well, I would say it's because for the last 2 years, most people have been home. They haven't had that interaction. They've been working from home, so they didn't get to see their coworkers. They didn't have that outside outlet. People haven't been able to go to church, or they haven't come to church because they've been scared, or who knows, all different things. So they haven't had people to talk to. And guys like to stuff it. They like to keep it inside. What was the saying? Never let them see you sweat. Well, for guys, it's not new. You have boxes. You have a nothing box. Guys are looking at me blank. Has your wife ever said to you, what are you thinking? What'd you say? Nothing. You have a nothing box. That's exactly where you go to. And that's great, that's wonderful, because that's the way God made you. You can go to that box, and you can just sit there, and you can just veg out. Women, though, are not made that way. We're made, our brains are hardwired, I say, like a big ball of electric fence, just going all the time. Everything's touching everything, we're always thinking about everything, and it's constantly looping. Who ever saw Disney's Toy Story 2? Remember at the very beginning? Okay, a few people. And my favorite part of that entire movie was at the very beginning, the piggy bank, they're looking through the TV, right? They're going, clicking through, and there's Al's barn, and he passes it, and he says, oh, go back, and he goes, no, I'm going too fast, I gotta keep going, go around the horn. You know, through all the channels to come back. That's pretty much a woman's brain. Going too fast, can't go back, and I just keep going until I come back to it. But what does that do? If you're in that box and you're secluded, you start doing self-talk. And if things aren't going good, if somebody said, can't you get anything right? We can never depend on you. You're worthless. You're not a good provider. Whether it's true or not, that's what we start thinking about. That's the things we start telling ourselves. For women, we get on a loop. And it's that buzzing. And we're constantly thinking. That's why my husband can sit down and go immediately to sleep. And I come home and there's still supper to be made and house to clean and laundry to do. And then it's 3:30 in the morning and I'm still working on this and working on that. And my brain's still going, right? And then when you've had no sleep, you get a call. Yet one more person's died. And you go, just one more, I'm going to snap. But see, that's the thing. As Christians, see, that's what we have the joy. The rest of the world, they're in the throes of despair because they don't know where their hope comes from. They just hope it's going to be better tomorrow. They don't know the person who holds tomorrow in his hands. They're constantly looking for something better down the road when Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow's problems. You got enough right now. Cast your burdens on me. As Christians, we know who we can go to. David was constantly talking in Psalms. Oh my gosh, did he know despair? He was at the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. But the neat thing with David, that's why I read a lot from Psalms. He'll be talking about, woe is me. Do you remember the old hee-haw adage? Woe is me and agony, and I can't remember the whole tagline. Do you remember that one? It was always, woe was me, right? But then David comes out of that, no matter how bad it is. And he says, but you, O God, you are my fortress. You are my rock. You are my salvation. You're the one I look to. You're the one that can pull me up out of this miry pit, out of the valley of gloom. You are who I put my trust in. So what's the self-talk that's going through your head? It's real easy to start getting caught up. Oh my gosh, I don't watch news anymore. If it's really important, I'm going to hear about it. Or I get my news from a Christian source, but I just tap in every now and then. Because it can get real depressing. I can remember 15 years ago, my husband got into Fox. I'm nothing against Fox, but I mean, he would watch it. And it was the same people, and it would be reruns. So it would start at 4, and it would go through all of them, and then come 7, it just started all over again. And he, same thing all the way up to 11. And I noticed, I think this was after 9/11, kind of, a few years out, and all of a sudden the atmosphere in the house changed. Both of us. The more news we watched, the angrier we got, the madder we got. Because the stuff we're watching, we had no control over, but it affected us, and it affected the environment. And finally, one day, I just said, enough. And we just stopped. Like cold turkey. It's almost worse than going off of caffeine. But guess what happened to the mood in the house? Went right up. Because while I couldn't control that, what I could control was my actions of what was being inputted in. I said those things are looping in our head, so instead, what is the self-talk we're talking? Well, this week, since we've been playing bells, it was, Here I Am, Lord, and I'll tell you what, that thing's been looping in here for the last 3 weeks. But with the way last week went, guess what else started going? Oh God, our help in ages past. We sang that one last week, and that was looping. I'll tell you which one's going to loop this week. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. So this workshop that I'm doing, it's a appreciation inquiry, which is a really big word. I don't know exactly, but it's been interesting. And we have people from all over the world that are partaking in this with Zoom. And last week, we had 3 of us got put into a breakout group. And one was from France, one was from Spain, and there was me from Nebraska. And we had absolutely nothing in common, but we were just talking about, what we could appreciate in life. And this week, 3 total random strangers again. And we were supposed to be talking about our strengths in difficult times. And it was really funny because we didn't talk about that at all. But all of a sudden, the gal on the bottom, now with Zoom, I'm not that savvy on Zoom. In fact, I don't really like it. But if you don't want people to see you, you can put up that one perfect picture of you that you really, really like, right? So that's what everybody sees, this really cute picture with you in this cute outfit. Or if you want them to see you, but they don't want to see that you got a total mess and chaos going behind you, you can do what's called a green screen. And then you can pick any picture you want behind them. If you want them to think that you're in Hawaii, or if you're in a forest, or I don't know. Or you can do like me and go all natural, and what you see is what you get. So there was 3 of us in this group, and the gal down below all of a sudden starts talking about that they've been struggling with infertility. And she was struggling with, she didn't know what her strength was in this because they're in the throes. I said, well, that's interesting. I can relate because we struggled with infertility for 5 years. And all the stuff that we went through, and finally just said, you know what, it wasn't worth it. And because she was talking about the ups and downs with the medication. And I said, God had told me it was going to be on his timing regardless of what we did. If he wanted us to do something, he put it on our hearts. And she was so caught up in that, I said, the problem is you're missing out on life right now. You're missing out on everything that's going on. Because I said, I guarantee you, once you do get pregnant and you have kids, you'll never go back to where you're at right now. You'll never be able to accomplish the things that you can accomplish right now. Well, then there was the gal up top mom, she had the green screen. And she's a mom. And I could tell, because every now and then there's a little hand doing this. and everything, you could hear and you could imagine all the chaos that was going on in the background behind this green screen. And she pipes up and she goes, we dealt with it too. The first one came immediately, and then all of a sudden 10 years went by, or not quite 10, 8 years went by. We couldn't get pregnant. We thought we'd be able to have another kid, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. And then we finally had our second one. And then the third one immediately, and that was the little one that was doing this. And she was struggling, and I told her, I said, well, what I didn't tell you was, I talked about the first two, but I said we had a third one that came immediately after too. So we had so much in common. But she was struggling because she felt like she needed to be doing more, like she needed to be doing another ministry or another something. And I said, what you're doing right now with those babies at home, that is your ministry. That's what God is calling you to do right now. Enjoy it, because, as I said last week, this too shall pass in a blink of an eye. You're never going to be at this spot ever again. And it was so exciting to have, there was 3 of us, we didn't even know, all different ages, different places, different parts. She was from Buffalo, New York, and she was from Georgia, I think. And we had the exact same thing in common. So after those 10 minutes, when we got back together, we had a chance just to say something that we learned, and that's what I mentioned, that we all had something in common, and that's what we could gain from talking to each other. And that's the point. When you're going through the throes of despair, it's real easy to want to what? Close down and not say anything and just go it alone. And God has put us together as the body of Christ to share with one another, talk with one another, talk it out. I can guarantee you that if probably the majority of all the suicide victims had somebody that they felt they could talk to and not have that other loop going in their head all the time, they would still be here today. Because they know their hope wouldn't be in their circumstances or in themselves, but in God. I had a wonderful thing that I heard from Byron Katie. He said, we put ourselves in so much pain when we try to make things go the way we want or we think they should be. Part of that appreciation, I said, was just being, just allowing. There's going to be times when you're going to be in grief, and that's okay. Everybody grieves at different times in different ways. There's going to be a time when you're upset about maybe a loss of a job, or a loved one, or just whatever, maybe health, and that's okay. If all you can do that day is just get out of bed, appreciate the fact you got out of bed. And as I said last week, if all you can do is put on your socks even if they don't match, that's okay. Just appreciate the fact that you had socks that were clean, that you could put on, that the dog hadn't drug off and chewed a hole in it. God has given us so much to appreciate. When we take the focus off of us, when we take the focus off of our circumstances, and we start looking to Him, that is where the despair ends and the hope begins. I want to leave you with this. Grapes must be crushed to make wine. Diamonds only come from being under pressure. Olives have to be pressed and crushed to release the sweet fragrance of their oil. And seeds only grow in darkness. So whenever you feel crushed or under pressure or pressed or in the darkness, just know that you are in a very, very powerful place of transformation. Just trust in the process and in the one who is in control.